Hello and welcome to the Tuesday, February 22nd, 2011 City Council Informational. We'll call the meeting to order. Our City Council Chief of Staff, City Clerk, is out of the office today, so we'll skip a staff report. We will move on to Public Services Committee. Had a meeting last week, and wondering if the chair had any comments he'd like to share with us.
During the meeting, we got an overview on executive orders from our Chief of Staff, Deborah Owen, and we are still looking into that at this time, how they're being used within the administration. Also, with administrative rules, there was a brief discussion on how they're being used in effect dealing with the public. And I think what's coming out of that now is that we're looking at certain departments to see how they use administrative rules in dealing with the public directly. And at that point, we will continue to look into both and continue to update the council as we go.
Anybody else from the Public Services Committee like to make a comment? So that discussion will continue on and will be updated as needed, I guess. Councilor Brown, we have a fiscal committee meeting this Friday.
We do. We will be meeting here first, and I forget what time. I think we start at 10, and we're going to be talking about contracts, what contracts the council would like to see. And then also after that, we have a teleconference or a video conference over at the health department regarding some software that the finance department is involved with.
I think it is at 9 o'clock on Friday.
Thank you.
But before you...
Let me double check. I have it on my calendar.
Okay.
But
while he's checking, that'll be here.
it is at 9:30 starting here.
9:30. Both of us were wrong. Very good. Any questions about the fiscal committee meeting coming up? Comments? Thoughts? All right, very good. We'll move on to our City Council open discussion. We do need to keep our discussion somewhat brief, as we have a joint meeting after this that the staff needs to get prepared for, and we do have, I believe, an executive session that is also after this meeting. So any City Council open discussion? Councilor Erpenbach.
I just have a couple of things. If you'll recall, it's been before the first of the year, Councilor Rolfing and I challenged our colleagues on the council to throw in $20 for the banquet, and we have a thank you note from the banquet. I just wanted to read just a part of it. We ended up donating $230, and it included some staff members as well, so there were several of us throwing in $20 apiece. And they just say, we're extremely grateful because your kindness and generosity has helped us to continue to serve the needs of our guests. They talk about they have served 142,000 meals in the last year. Children received 20,000 of those meals, and so she talks about 12,000 gallons of milk, all those kinds of things. So if you're interested in reading that thank you note, it's here. But I just wanted to commend my colleagues for jumping in on that with me. That was a blast. And then my other comment is about the Old Courthouse Museum is opening its Vietnam in Our Words exhibit on Thursday night with a reception from 5 to 7. It's one of those exhibits that is taking on a real local flavor. You're going to see video and local remembrances of folks that served in the Vietnam War. So again, it opens on Thursday night, the 24th of February. That's all I have. Thank you.
Very good. Any other comments or thoughts? I wanted to share one idea with you guys. Last Monday, when the Build a Downtown group proposed those 4 locations for downtown, I had, with some reservation, actually called the owners of the 2 businesses on Minnesota Avenue there, or I guess it's Dakota. And just late this afternoon, I heard back from both of them, and both would be willing to relocate. Now, the one business we all probably know is the Romantics. It used to be the Studio One, which I think a lot of us would like to see relocated somewhere else. But I just wanted to share that with the group, that redeveloping an area might just be as beneficial to our city as the fact of building an event center at all, or even a convention center, if this were to be a convention center. I'm just throwing that out there, but I'll share these phone numbers and these contacts with the staff, or if they'd like it. But they're all open for discussions about moving. So I think that's great for Sioux Falls, great for possibilities for even, I know, build it downtown, but even just for Sioux Falls, if we could redevelop that whole area into something great, there's opportunity here. Councilor Litz.
I too thought about those sites, and the one that you're talking about, those two businesses moving out of there would certainly elevate the area. But the other one thing that came to my mind was the park that's down there, and I'm not sure what sort of a legal agreement or perpetuity agreement we have with that, but that would be another thing that we'd have to deal with. And then I think, Vernon, you and I were on the council at one point. We had talked about when we closed the street down or 7th Street, about having a large joint governmental campus type situation, and that is also still looming in the minds of the county down there to some degree for the future, because at some point City Hall is getting pretty crowded, and the county administration building is getting pretty crowded, and I think perhaps the architectural and useful life of that facility down there may be at the point where it's not worth renovating. And so, those are a couple other possibilities for that piece of land. And then the other chunk of land that I thought about and did a little bit of investigating was the Sioux Steel site. And I think that they would be willing to relocate. I'm not sure what the price tag on that would be, but in some sideways conversations, I think for the residents to properly move out of that location, it's going to take them 3 years to get it done. So if you're looking at a downtown site for that, that's going to be a factor for that as well.
Okay, very good. Okay, we'll move on to our presentations. First presentation is the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant by Amy, or I guess we have Dave. Welcome.
Good afternoon. I'm Bob Capel. I'm
Bob.
with the Public Works Environmental Division, and it's a pleasure to be here today, and we'd like to thank you, the chair, and the council members. This will be a brief presentation just to give an update status on our Energy Efficiency Conservation Block Grant, and I'm going to turn it over to Amy Ladonsky, who is our Sustainability Coordinator, and we will proceed from there. Thank you.
Good afternoon, City Council. As Bob mentioned, we do want to provide you an update on our Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant. As many of you know, this EECBG grant was funded for the first time by American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009, and it represents a presidential priority to implement energy efficiency and conservation measures. More specifically, the goals of this grant are to reduce fossil fuel emissions, reduce the total energy use of eligible entities, improve energy efficiency in the building and other appropriate sectors such as transportation, and create and retain jobs. On November 10th of 2009, the City of Sioux Falls was awarded a little over $1.5 million in energy efficiency and conservation block grant funding. In anticipation of this award, prior to approval, the Public Works Department contracted with an agency to complete an energy audit of 35 city facilities. The audit report summarized the site findings, energy consumption overview of those facilities, and identified and analyzed prospective energy conservation measures. Because of the way the grant was structured, even though we completed that audit prior to the official award, that audit was able to be funded with those grant dollars. The DOE structured that in such a way. But upon receipt of the grant and final energy audit report, an internal team of managers assembled to rank order the prospective projects that were before us. Those managers evaluated which projects would provide the greatest amount of economic and emissions or CO2 savings. This was a very thorough and iterative process in which we not only evaluated those monetary and emission savings, but answered questions like, is this in the city's best interest at this time? Or is this already part of the facility manager's budgets? The highest priority projects were then rank ordered, submitted to directors, and presented before the Capital Improvement Plan Committee for approval. Once we received that approval, engineering project managers were assigned and then work was initiated. Thus far, improvements have been made to the City Hall HVAC system. Traffic signals have been converted from incandescent to LED bulbs, and the Sustainability Master Plan Research Project was recently initiated. You'll be learning a little bit more about that in just a few moments. Design or contract negotiations are underway on the remaining projects, but to date, approximately $380,000 has been spent. Just to give you an idea of some of the savings that resulted from one of the projects that we've completed, actually, a sample intersection, 12th Street and Westport Avenue, operated at an average power cost for their traffic signals of about $180 per month prior to conversion. And after conversion to the LED lights, the average monthly cost has dropped to about $26 per month. Not included among these savings is the labor time it took to switch out those incandescent lights much more frequently. They burned out with much greater frequency. We anticipate that those LED lights will last about a decade, depending on use, where those incandescent lights lasted between 1 to 2 years. So there's a labor savings there as well. This effort has really required cross-departmental cooperation. For instance, the quarterly reporting to the federal government of grant expenditures and milestones is the responsibility of the sustainability program, myself. But we've worked closely in tandem with the engineering division, who've assigned project managers to oversee the daily operation of facility improvements and contract negotiations. Early on in the project, because of some contractor underestimates at the time of application, a staff member will be addressing council at this evening's city council meeting to request a resolution amending the CIP to shift additional grant dollars to support a public parking lighting efficiency retrofit project. Progress updates on how we've been doing on these projects, how much money we've been spending is available for the public to view frequently. I update that monthly, although it's a requirement that we do it quarterly. Those are provided on siouxfalls.org. And at this time, I'd be happy to entertain any questions that you might have.
Any questions for Amy? Looks very good. Councilor Anderson.
Amy, at the time, the city's doing a sustainability study. Could you give us an idea of when that is going to be completed and available?
We anticipate that this will be an 8 to 9 month study, and we're getting underway officially today with a presentation that will follow my presentation.
Okay, I thought there was supposed to be one that was supposed to be done here very soon, or is that the audit that you were discussing?
Well, you might be referring to the energy efficiency audit. Now, what you might also be referring to is we do have until May of this year to obligate the funding for the energy efficiency grant. So we need to be under contract for all of those other projects by May of this year. So that is coming up quite quickly. However, the Sustainability Master Plan, we're already under contract for that. We've met that obligation, and we anticipate that that will be complete by late fall of this year. And the folks that will be following me, R.W. Beck, our consultants for the Sustainability Master Plan, can elaborate more on that process.
And with our traffic lights and our regular street lights, we're looking at digital and LED also there?
241 intersections have been converted from incandescent to LED. Yes. That conversion has already taken place. City of Sioux Falls was so progressive that they were already converting these lights before we even received these dollars. So originally we had anticipated that this project would cost us $100,000 of EECBG dollars. However, in the end, it ended up costing us $23,000 because we found that City of Sioux Falls, I was fairly new at the time, but City of Sioux Falls had already started that conversion process.
And besides the parking ramp lights, are we looking at any other green effects that we could do here within the city?
I'm so glad that you bring that up. The projects that we're funding through this grant is just a portion of what that list originally was. When we got that original list from our contractor saying, here are the prospective projects that you could do, we didn't have enough grant dollars to cover that. So the intention of management is to, once we get the rest of these projects under contract, which will happen in the next 2 months or so, we're going to go back to the drawing board, look at those other prospective projects, and begin to rank order those to see if they already fit within our budget or to identify additional grant opportunities for that. That will also be a significant part of the Sustainability Master Plan as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on. Bob, you want to introduce our second presentation on Sustainability Master Plan Kickoff?
Yes, again, Bob Capel, Public Works Environmental. The next presentation, we're going to be talking about our Master Sustainability Plan. And just a little background, City of Sioux Falls has always been a pretty progressive and responsible entity when it comes to environmental and sustainability matters, probably even before sustainability became a vogue term. But we have a great opportunity here today because of the EECBG grant funds. We are able to retain a consultant to take us to the next level on sustainability. And what I'd like to do right now is introduce our consultant that we have selected, and they are with R.W. Beck, and I'd like to introduce Robert Craigs.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, council members. Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity to be here today. Hopefully I'll get this right. I was looking at the directions on here to make sure I didn't do the wrong thing.
I'm sure you'll be fine.
You should have a presentation, I think, that was forwarded by Bob and Amy, and I'm going to go over the presentation and do my best to answer your questions, and I understand you have a very ambitious agenda today, so I'll be concise as I can be. As Bob said, my name is Robert Craigs. I'm with R.W. Beck. I reside in basically our Minneapolis-St. Paul office. And what I wanted to do this afternoon, if you're following along here, is to provide an overview of the project team, who is the consulting firm that you've retained to basically move forward with the Sustainability Master Plan. What are the project objectives and key issues, the project approach, as Councilmember Anderson mentioned, what about the schedule, and then also some of the key outcomes. So I'll hit some of the highlights and try to give you a sense of the process that we'll be using and what you can expect. This is an organizational chart that gives you a sense of how we are going to undertake the project. As you can see, the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota Office of Public Works is at the top, and I'm working directly with Bob and Amy as the project manager. With me today is Fred Doran, who's a client liaison, and then also Mary Chamberlain, who's leading the solid waste recycling assessment. The two of them are here with me today. We also have the architectural firm of Koch Hazard, who is part of our team, who's a local Sioux Falls architectural firm. And approximately a year and a half ago, R.W. Beck was purchased by a company called Science Applications International Corporation. So we're an SAIC company. What's most critical, I think, about this organizational chart is what we listed here as subject matter experts. As Amy was outlining in the last presentation, you've got a range of issues associated with sustainability, including energy, including solid waste management, including water conservation, including land use issues. There's a whole range of particular issues that we'll be focusing on. So the way the project team is set up, as you can see, is that we bring a variety of subject matter experts to the table to work on the project and to assist all of the folks that are working on the Sustainability Master Plan. The project's objectives include conducting a sustainability assessment. You need to have a baseline. If you've ever seen or reviewed some sustainability master plans from other communities, they talk about having a baseline. A baseline is a way in which to determine our direction forward. Obviously, to make progress, we need to know where we stand presently. So part of our work will be establishing basically a baseline through a sustainability assessment. We'll also work with a group of representatives, both internal and external stakeholders, and I'll talk about that briefly, to establish some sustainability goals. Those goals will be part of a sustainability plan, and a plan is only as good as those that have the buy-in to basically implement it, and the plan itself will have policies and measures associated with essentially implementing the plan and ways in which to evaluate the progress going forward. So the plan itself will supplement essentially the Shape Sioux Falls 2035 plan. It's not to be substituted for it. It's not a land use plan. What's critical is to move forward some of the existing, what I would consider sustainability initiatives that you've already undertaken. In 2008, as you're probably aware of, you initiated the Leading Green Initiative to implement various measurable solutions in terms of environmental, economic, and social concerns, and this is to move that particular initiative forward in a manner which is what we would consider integrating it cross-departmental. In other words, you have the Public Works Department doing a lot of good things in this area. You have the Water Reclamation group doing some good things. You have the Transportation and engineers doing that type of thing. The idea here is to integrate all of these activities and come up with basically a direction forward or a blueprint for moving forward. If you look at the next slide, this gives you a visual sense of what the planning process involves. The foundation is what's called the triple bottom line, which those of you that are familiar with sustainability may have seen that terminology before. It's basically what I would call, back in my geometry days, a Venn diagram with the intersection of economic opportunity, community well-being, and then natural resources. It's the intersection of those things. It's to take all of those into account. The process, like a lot of planning processes, includes developing basically a vision, a mission, what are the key issues, and then what are the focuses around those, so then you can determine what kind of implementation plan will help you reach those goals that you lay out. This particular planning process overview is an example from another community that we assisted, and as you can see, we went from essentially a mission statement to a set of what we call key issues. Then we had 7 different focus areas, and as I outlined before, you can see here everything from economic vitality to energy to water to waste. Tomorrow we will initiate the steering committee, or the first piece of our internal stakeholder work, and we'll begin working on what our mission and issues are, and we'll have an opportunity to move down the road. So what's critical, I think, is putting this in what I would consider layperson's terms, and I had the opportunity up until December to be in your shoes as a council member where I reside, and I understand the ambitious agendas that you all have, as well as putting things in terms whereby your constituents can understand this. So I put this slide in with Amy's support and Bob's support. Where are we now? What is the baseline for Sioux Falls? Where are you going? What's the direction in which the Sustainability Master Plan needs to take you? How do we get there? What are the different components or the pieces? How do we engage in the community? Because the Sustainability Master Plan, as I mentioned, to be effective, you need to have buy-in. You need to have buy-in across departments as well as externally. And then how do we measure success? What are the metrics? What is the accountability? This next slide gives you a sense of what we consider are the 3 phases or building blocks for developing the plan. The first is to define a collaborative sustainability approach, and that has the 3 components as listed there. The second phase is developing a sustainability master plan and some of the key inventories. The request for proposals that R.W. Beck responded to included 2 specific key analyses. One is a greenhouse gas inventory, which will build off the work that Amy just mentioned in terms of looking at some of the energy issues, as well as undertaking a solid waste and recycling assessment. So those are 2 analyses that are key in terms of the Sustainability Master Plan. The last phase then is to develop a master plan and the framework, again, for evaluating the progress associated with the master plan. And most critically, and not to be understated, is the stakeholder involvement. And I'll talk briefly, as I mentioned, about what we're proposing in terms of gathering stakeholder input. Phase 1, to provide a little bit more detail, is defining the collaborative sustainability approach. Starts with the council informational. We're also working to establish basically a framework for the stakeholder input. And tomorrow, as I mentioned, we'll be initiating some of that work. It's also to do this initial program assessment, as I outlined, and to take some of the work that you presently have done and to supplement it and build upon it. Then phase 2, as I outlined, includes implementing the external and internal stakeholder engagement pieces, conducting the greenhouse gas inventory, the solid waste assessment, and then what we call the program identification and optimization. Obviously, you have limited budget dollars. You have a lot of priorities, and what this last piece is a prioritization process, which enables you to understand very specifically what the options are, what the criteria is, and where you should be spending your dollars to get the biggest benefit based on your goals. The next slide gives you a understanding, I think, of the importance of stakeholder endorsement. And in talking with the steering committee of staff here in the Public Works Department for you all, we got a real sense of that in interviewing and working with the staff to date on how critical it is to get input from cross departments or interdisciplinary as well as externally. And as you can see here, we've tried to graphically give you a sense of some of those different interests from the council, employees and city staff, citizens, civic groups, nonprofits or NGOs as they're termed, as well as business industry, as well as higher education. You need a mix of methodologies or approaches to get that feedback, and as I'll show you here, there's different ways in which we're going to go about that. This is the proposed, what we call city team structure, and the key pieces of this are there's a steering team which is composed of 7 staff members within the city departments, and they represent a cross-section of the departments. There's a core sustainability team which is made up of what we call internal and external stakeholders who will act as a sounding board for the work that's done by the steering committee. There's also some executive champions or executive co-champions, and they will include, from what we understand, the mayor and Councilmember Anderson. And the executive co-champions act as a liaison to the group, as well as do, as the name suggests, be the champion for the Sustainability Master Plan. The next slide gives you a little bit more detail in terms of that city team structure, as well as the interface with the external stakeholders. As you can see here, here's the names of the steering team members, including Amy, Eric Beck, Bob Kappel, Trent Lubers, Dave Loveland, Dave McElroy, and Andy Berg. And again, the steering team will meet tomorrow. The core sustainability team, as you can see, we have a list of different types of interest that we've recommended should be included. We're working with Bob and the department to fill those particular interest or positions within that team. Ultimately, once the steering team meets, the core sustainability team will meet and react to the work that's being done by the steering team. And then at the end of this process, the planning process, there'll be a draft plan, and I'll come back and basically share that draft plan with all of you in a similar setting so you can react to that. In particular, the stakeholder involvement, the steering team will have 3 workshops plus some interim tasks. They'll have homework, as I like to call it, and as my colleague Lynn Adams, who will be here tomorrow to help facilitate, they'll have homework in terms of some of the formation of the sustainability plan. The core sustainability team, as I mentioned, will basically provide endorsement and provide feedback to executive briefings. And then we're also going to have 2 open houses. An open house for the public, and this was recommended and is a very good idea in terms of approaching this to ensure you get feedback from the public. There'll be an open house, and we're going to try to schedule that in the next 60 days. There'll be another open house at the end when the draft plan is developed, and there'll also be an opportunity to provide some input online through the good online tools that you presently have. This is to give you a sense of the breadth of the different organizations and interests that need to be represented. This represents a whole cross-section of the various communities, organizations, interest here. It by no means represents all of those that will have some say or involvement. It's just to give you a sense of our perspective and your staff's perspective on stakeholder engagement. The greenhouse gas inventory, as I mentioned previously, is a key piece of this work. It's a systematic accounting of the greenhouse gases that are emitted by your different facilities, and as Amy pointed out, presently you've had some work done in that area that we'll be reviewing and build upon. Basically, greenhouse gases can be methane, there's nitrous oxides, there's other types of gases that are considered greenhouse gases, from electricity, from use of natural gas, from your fleets. And they're usually characterized in terms of metric tons of carbon equivalent. So that's something that you'll see in your sustainability master plan. The key here is to do it in a systematic, transparent, reproducible way. We are going to use basically a method that has been used across the United States and internationally in terms of doing the greenhouse gas inventory. And one of my colleagues at SAIC, who's worked closely with EPA on this particular methodology, will be leading this up. And as you can see, our goal again is to develop a baseline for your greenhouse gas emissions. Once we've completed that, then we will develop the plan itself, and this, as mentioned here, this online dashboard is a way to measure the progress. In terms of putting the proposal together, we thought what was critical is an easy way for your constituents to be able to understand what's in the plan, what are the key goals, what progress is being made. So we would work with the staff in terms of developing what's called an online dashboard to be able to measure that progress. The bottom line is we want to develop something that is usable for a variety of audiences. So it'll be heavy in graphics. It'll talk about some background. It'll give you some tables. It tells you specifically what are the strategies, the issues, and what's being implemented, and measure how you get there. Now, planning is only good as the tools that you have. And we at R.W. Beck have a tool called Optimity, which is essentially a tool that allows you to compare and prioritize and select programs that fall into the sustainability umbrella. We will use this tool as part of the planning process to navigate options, make decisions, and select the preferred programs. The bottom line is that you need to understand what's the next best dollar spent, because the triple bottom line focuses not only on environment, not only on social, but also on the economic pieces. So it's the intersection, as I mentioned, of those three. What the Optimity model does is it provides you with an opportunity to optimize, and what this graph does, and I know it has a lot of acronyms on it, and Bob communicated that to me when we were putting this together, it's to look at everything from solar panels on one building to implementing a recycling program to other types of water resource conservation. So it enables you as the client to understand, if we do this, this, and this, what does it mean? If we only do this and don't do these two types of activities, what does it mean? It's a way in which to optimize and to understand how you can get the best out of the next best dollar. So to Council Member Anderson's question in terms of length, the proposed schedule here is approximately 9 months. What the timeline here, it gives you a sense of the different tasks and the phases that I've outlined. You can see that the stakeholder engagement is throughout the process. You can see that we'll undertake the greenhouse gas inventory and the solid waste recycling assessment and the optimization piece here after we get going with the process. The online dashboard and the SMP documentation, or the Sustainability Master Plan documentation, are at the back end. The other aspects of the timeline here, it shows you the open houses, as I mentioned, 2, council informationals, 2, steering team workshops, 3, and then the core sustainability team workshops. Basically, those again are as an advisory panel to, or as a sounding board to the work that the steering team will do. So we're ready to start today, and we've actually got started, but this is kind of the official start. The outcome of this particular process will include what I see as 3 things: educated and engaged stakeholders, both internally at the city as well as your community. You'll have a process whereby you've looked at the community stewardship of resources and how we can expend our dollars wisely, and you'll have a clear and executable plan, which essentially, as I like to call it, is a blueprint for direction. And the idea here is that ultimately you will have something that you can talk to your constituents about. It'll be easy to understand, and it'll be graphically comparable to what we're trying to present here today. So it'll be a roadmap for success, and in summary, the roadmap to success is to integrate sustainability across the city and across the community, and to bring all the different resources together to be able to do that. And as on behalf of R.W. Beck and Coke Hazard, our sub-consultant, we look forward to working with all of you. Thank you, and I'll try to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? Councilor Anderson.
A couple of years
Co-champion. Councilor Anderson. Part of the dream
Hopefully I
team.
wasn't premature in announcing that.
A couple of years ago, and I don't know if this is something you're going to be able to answer, or maybe our Public Works Director. A couple of years ago, we had a presentation on carbon credits. Are we still involved in that as far as carbon credits? Are we still buying and selling those? And how is that going? That's something I haven't heard of since we had our presentation here.
I know the answer is yes. So I'll let David tell you more.
Sure. As part of the Dave McElroy, landfill superintendent. How's the weather over there, Bob?
I'm here with all my friends. It must be great.
Yeah, as part of the landfill gas capture and recovery system, which we're now generating the sale of landfill gas, so beneficial reuse of landfill gas that can be used to power the industrial boilers at our partner Poet Biorefining in Chancellor. We're also, as a fact that we are not required by EPA or any environmental matter to capture that greenhouse gas, that methane, which is 23 times worse than carbon dioxide. So by burning that methane and capturing the energy and converting it to carbon dioxide, we're actually benefiting the environment. So as part of that, there are companies out there like Google, for example, that like to purchase the environmental incentives to be a more green, a more sustainable company. So we actually have generated approximately $900,000 in carbon credit revenue from the landfill gas system.
Thank you. Next question would be, with these stakeholder groups, we're going to have an internal group and an external group. How is that external group going to be selected? I've seen a list of different job categories, but not really individuals. Are we going to put out a call for people, or are we already selected a list?
I think Mr. Capel anticipated that question.
I have now. Good question. We have not set a set criteria. The steering committee team's going to meet tomorrow. We're going to discuss that. But initially, we're basically looking at probably doing a press release. And we'll probably put it on our website about the opportunity to be part of that core sustainability team. Then also, we've had a lot of experience with some local firms, some local institutions that have been very sustainable and environmentally conscious. And we'll do some personal reach outs to those organizations to see if they are interested in being part of that core sustainability team.
Thank you. Another question? Myself and other council members have been interested in renewable energy here in Sioux Falls. I have done a couple seminars here. Actually, a week ago, we did our second seminar looking at wind and solar use within the city. How would this sustainability study work with what I've been looking at and the rest of the council, updating the rest of the council on this also?
Well, certainly, conceptually, Councilmember Anderson, the energy piece is critical to the overall vision and mission that we would anticipate would be developed as part of this. In terms of the different areas of focus, energy is going to be at the top of the list, I would believe, based on the activity you've already undertaken and some of the other work that we would expect. So what we would do at the beginning of the process is work with Amy and Bob to make sure that we understand the scope of what's been done already and what's presently being done. So it might make sense, if it works for you at some point in the near future, for me or members of my team to sit down and talk with you about it.
Okay. Thank you. One last thing. I do want to say thank you to the Public Works Department and all the other departments that have been interested in renewable energy. It's been great seeing the responses that we've had at the two meetings that we've had also. And something that I learned while I was in a seminar of National League of Cities was that some other cities have looked at using this methane recapture system that we have at our landfill. And at this time, they were still just looking at those, but after having some conversations with those cities, and one of them was Charlotte, North Carolina, I made our Public Works Department aware that they could probably be getting some phone calls and requests for some visits. So good job out there, what you guys are doing. I appreciate it.
Any other questions? If I could, the cost of The cost of this study?
$207,000.
207. Going through the presentation, it looks very detailed, and this money is actually coming from the grant portion, so that's really good. I think it's going to lay out a great foundation. Council leadership, Sue Aguilar and myself, were contacted by the administration and Public Works on looking for a co-champion, part of that dream team. And we recommended Councilor Anderson because of his work and interest in renewable energy. And I think on behalf of the council, we're excited that you've selected Councilor Anderson to be a part of that team. I think he'll serve you well, as well to bring the rest of the council up to speed. Anything else?
Last thing on this, I think that the one thing the public should understand is that what we're looking at is to see what type of investment the city can make in making our city and area more greener, and the return on that investment also. So those are very important to us in making sure that our dollars are spent properly.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Jameson?
Yes?
I do have something that I should have brought under open discussion. We used to have Troy Larson from Lewis and Clark come before us periodically, I believe quarterly. Somehow that's fallen off our agenda, and I think given where the federal funding is at, we should probably engage that again. I know Chad sent us a letter today, or an email, but especially going into the budget right now, I think it's really important that we begin to understand what budgetary impacts that could have on the city.
Chad, before you chime in, would you like to have Troy come? Would you like to
If
have
that's the
Public Works?
wish of the rest of the council, I think that we should get back to hearing from him quarterly, especially now with the funding issues that are out there.
Okay, very good. Chad?
If I may, Chad Hebe with the Engineering Division of Public Works. I would have had Troy here probably 6 weeks ago or maybe 2 months ago, but I sent an email today. I don't know if you had a chance to read it, but the reason I haven't had him here yet is because of the 2011 funding is kind of uncertain at this point. So I do plan on having him here either the end of March or early April, when he will know exactly what that 2011 funding is. But I can also get him scheduled regularly on a quarterly basis.
Thank you, Chad.
Thank you. We'll work on scheduling that. I would just a follow-up conversation. I did talk to Troy Larson, and I think I was trying to figure out just how much more money they needed, and it boils down to about $6 million, and that's to go through and clean out the pipe before they start pumping water, and to construct 4 monitoring stations somewhere along the way. But it's $6 million is what stands between us and Lewis and Clark Water. I don't want to put any words in anybody's mouth, but that's a quick summary of what I understand it to be. But we'll work with Chad and make sure we get a time with Troy just sooner than later. Very good. Okay, we do have a request for an executive session, which for all those in the audience, we'll need everybody to leave so that we can have that session. And we will resume the joint. Well, we are going into executive session for pending litigation under South Dakota Codified Law 1-25-23. I need a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Motion that we adjourn into executive session.
We have a motion by
Litz.
Councilor Litz and seconded by Councilor Anderson to go into executive session at 4:45. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.